So this year, Geelong Grammar School celebrates 165 years. And we had so much planned in terms of what the celebration may look like. And of course, as of the 26th of January, things turned a little different for us. But we've kept this initiative going, and its intent is involving adults who have influenced us this year, have influenced us from the broader community. And whether you realise it or not, Brett Sutton, you have very much influenced who we are and what has happened for us as a school. So I'm asking all of our special community members the same set of 5 questions. It does end up being a few more questions as we speak, but there are 5 consistent questions. And my first one is, what was your greatest lesson at school? What did school teach you ultimately?
They're going to be great questions, aren't they? I'll take my time. It's an important question. It's one I want to get right, and I'm not trying to construct anything. I'm just trying to nail it. I think the most important lesson for me was that there was an experience in school that was much, much broader and deeper than I had ever imagined going into it. That the content that is delivered in school was maybe the smallest bit, and it was the bit that I thought was everything, especially going into high school. You know, I'd had a diversity of experiences in primary school, and clearly there were lessons that went beyond just the teaching content. But going into high school, I think my focus had narrowed, and I had a sense that there was something that would be delivered to me that I would use and absorb, learn, and put it towards a career, a life path, without recognising that it was wrapped up and it was contained in experiences and understandings and philosophical underpinnings and moral and ethical growth and social growth that I had never imagined, and that it came from areas and directions that I had never imagined. And so not just the engagement with my peers and the broader school community, but the layers and layers that sit behind the teachers and the teaching that takes place, that, again, at a very superficial level, you just don't realise is there, and you don't realise how much conscious thought goes into the provision of that deeper understanding. And it didn't even dawn on me at the time, but you go through it and you look back, and the realisation just comes in really significant ways that the way that you are built as an adult has all of this legacy behind it, has all of this nuance, and like the layers of an onion, is largely unrecognised until you peel it back, until you consciously explore it, and you recognise just how much, how fulsome that experience is, and what profound and multifaceted elements there are to that experience. And again, that teaching is this sometimes very narrowly conceived of experience, when in fact it has all of these dimensions to it.
Your answer has actually anticipated the next questions, but before we go to them, I'm curious, did your examination or your reflection, did it strengthen once you became a parent?
I think it absolutely did. I think, in a sense, we have aspirations for our children that are, of course, shaped by our own experience and pathway in academic life, but it's in reflecting on the other elements that have been part of your journey and part of your personal growth that you then project onto your children, and you have an understanding that A, that's going to be part of their school experience, but B, that you can't you can never fully separate that from your parental guidance, and that they're all intertwined in a wonderfully synergistic way, and that you should recognise that more fulsome experience is a collective effort on the entire community, with a focus on the school community, of course, but absolutely.
We aspire to offer what we describe as an exceptional education. And noting some of your early comments really distinguished between schooling and an education, with the education being the much fuller offering. How would you describe what an exceptional education should look like or be like? Whether or not you've experienced it, either personally or through your children, what would you want it to be?
I think it should. I think it should be in recognition of the full human experience. That the common things that we cherish, the common things that we value, should be reflected in that experience that we get through education. That relates to the universal experiences of suffering, the universal experiences of a path to happiness, the universal experiences of what it means to find meaning in life, to find purpose, to have a deep sense of satisfaction in the things that we do, in our working life, in our family life, and in the broader engagement that we have to draw whatever meaning we can from life experience. And so I think to the extent that education can bring in those elements and reflect them, and of course, nothing delivers everything. We're all part of a giant complex web that assists in that regard. But I think the extent to which education reflects on those universal human experiences and needs, and tries to provide some stewardship in that regard, that allows us to find that human potential and allows us to find the well-being in our own lives in the broader sense, is a fantastic thing.
And given those universal experiences, what does it mean, do you think, to behave ethically? Can it be taught?
I think it can be taught. I think we would do ourselves and our children and our community a disservice to think that it's just set, that you have an inherent tendency to behave in a certain way without an ability to reflect. I think if there's anything that characterises the human condition and some of the human obligations that arise from the capacity to reflect on who we are, on how we interact with others, and our place and everyone's place in the world, that needs to be engendered through a process of teaching. And if that's primarily one of challenge, reflection, new insights, then I think that's a very powerful thing. I mean, the reality is we sometimes make assumptions about intrinsic characteristics of individuals because we don't bring a place of challenge to it, or we don't open up the world. And so people appear to us to be constrained almost as automatons because they never have that opportunity. But whenever we know through our own family the fullness of human character, we understand that there are all of these elements in play. We're often very quick to judge strangers by saying, oh, you're intrinsically good or bad or otherwise. But when we know the nuance in people's lives, realise how circumstances challenge us, realise that we can move through times when we are not at our best and other times when we flourish, then they're the real opportunities, I think, for that fuller learning experience. And we all have a role to play in that, because our blind spots are our blind spots for a reason. We can't see them. But if others can bring us to that area that we are not conscious of, then we are fuller for being shown that part of our lives.
A wise response. A wise response. And the next question is, what does it mean to be wise for you? How do you I guess an assumption for us is that, you know, we strive again to enable wisdom within our community. And a reflection that I've had throughout this year particularly has been that what looks wise or feels wise for some feels very unwise for others. So I wonder, from your point of view, what does it look like? What is wisdom to you?
It's definitely the journey and not the destination. You're right. We can come to a view. It can be too fixed. It can be too intellectual. It can be too disengaged from that fuller apprehension and appreciation. Because I think there are views that wisdom is really just the intellectual. It's the knowledge that we hold. It's the experience we have of things, but it's actually the broader interaction with all of that that forever allows us to try and take a step back, again to challenge, again to broaden the view, because we you know, it's a pithy statement to say we don't know what we don't know, but it's entirely true. When we are challenged in ways that we had never even thought were possible, that's an opportunity for growth as well. Absolutely, it's a challenge. We may well suffer through it significantly, but there's no question that it brings us to a new place of understanding that just a simple delivery of facts and figures would never bring us to. So I think wisdom is making yourself open and opening paths for others to that fuller understanding of, you know, this crazy world we live in.
And maybe in the most humble of ways, which does connect to you don't know what you don't know. So bringing a humility to that, I think, is so special.
Absolutely. I think if we are really convinced that we know everything we need to know, or that we're absolutely right in our path and we don't need to listen to anyone else, that anyone who is challenging our view of things or our way of doing things is simply ill-informed or intellectually inferior, then, you know, that's a recipe for disaster, because you know, the pride comes before the fall. It's not a cliche for no reason at all. It is literally because we constrain our vision of the world, and we'll be blindsided by it literally, because it comes from left field, and we don't recognise that fuller experience because we never opened ourselves to it.
The blind spot again. The blind spot. Now, you're nearly through. This is your final question. How do your choices, yours, shape a better world?
Oh, I mean, this has been a year for big choices for me, clearly. I've said it before, they've been impossible choices, because a better world is different to everyone. A better world is sometimes the choice of the lesser of two harms, which is a path I've tried to tread in this space. And you know, I think the only thing I can try and remain determined about is to be purely motivated for people's well-being, for people's health, and to do the right thing by the broader community. That's not a task for me alone, and so I think my choices are also about trying to open up to others' views, to others' opinions, and that challenge that will help me make better choices. They are not mine alone. Maybe they come down to the specific choices that I make, but I certainly hope that I'm making choices that are protective of people's health and well-being. Primarily, that's the role I'm in. But I'm very mindful of all of those other elements in play when you make a choice in one direction, what you shut down in another direction, and how significantly challenging that can be, and indeed how harmful it can be, but always remaining cognizant that I'm trying to find a pathway that is the least disruptive, least damaging in a really difficult labyrinth of choices.
Well, we say thank you for choosing to serve Victoria, and thank you for choosing to speak with us. And Merry Christmas.